Hi, folks. I discovered butternut squash when I was in my 30s because my parents didn't like butternut squash. So I think in Grand Junction, someone made a butternut squash soup I thought was amazing. And so I've adapted this from what I think she did. But let's look at what's in my version of the soup that Paul really likes. And this is a vegan recipe. It's easy to add butter and not make it vegan, or add some chicken broth and it won't be vegan obviously anymore. But what I'm going to do today is a vegan recipe. So what's in this? This is some quinoa, some butternut squash cut up in little pieces, some onions, some potatoes. They're optional, you don't have to use those. I'm going to put coconut milk. You don't have to do that either. I'm going to use garlic. My brother's a garlic purist, but I'm not. So he would use the cloves. We'll be adding some water, but you could also add a broth, a vegetable broth, or even a chicken broth. I'll be cooking this in olive oil. Let's show you the label in front. Olive oil. You can add butter too, but I find olive oil works just fine. For seasonings, we'll have turmeric and salt. I also found that adding curry really adds an additional zing to it. So that's what we'll be doing. So you want to start by popping a little oil in there. And when it's hot, and you can tell it's hot because if you put some, I don't know if you heard that because I did have a hot pan. Put a little bit of water in that, and it'll sizzle at you. You can add the onions, squash, and potatoes. And I'm going to stir these around a little bit. And right away, I'm going to add the turmeric. Let me drop turmeric, some curry. And I found that curry, how much you use depends on what kind you've got. If it's a new curry, it's going to be a little bit more spicy. I found I would use some curry that had been sitting around for a little while, and it was pretty bland. Oh, and I almost forgot the garlic. I should put some garlic at the bottom here. So I'm going to clear a little hole now because I forgot my garlic, and put some garlic in the middle. Here's the garlic. And you want to put the garlic in to cut the pain, the sharpness. Stir this around. It feels like it's a little warm. We'll turn it down a little bit. Turmeric. Maybe you could see it going in. I like being pretty generous with the turmeric. I think it's going to come off. Generous with the turmeric. Turmeric will stain. You can actually dye your Easter eggs. If you do an Easter egg thing, dye your Easter eggs with turmeric. It's a lovely shade of yellow. And again, I'm going to put a little bit more curry in. We like curry. We like it to bang at us. And we want to cook these until the onions are translucent and these guys are soft. So we're going to let it simmer there for a little bit. So now everything is soft now. So I'm going to add my water, and I'll boil it a little more to make it a little softer. And one of the things I'm going to do eventually is, and you can tell when it's done by, I'm going to mash it a little bit. There are times it's not quite ready to be mashed. I'm going to cook it enough so that I can mash it. I have put some of this in the blender to get a nice, really smooth soup. My husband Paul likes it with some chunks in it. So I found using a potato masher. I don't know what this thing's called, but I call it a potato masher. Works really well with this. So let's bring it to a boil, simmer it a little bit. Okay, I've been boiling this for a while and it's getting pretty soft, so I can start to mush it with my potato masher. And until I get the texture I want. Some people like just a broth with the chunks in it. I like a combination. I like a really thick broth. But I like to leave some chunks behind because that's what Paul likes. You can, at some point, depending on how quickly you want to get this done, add the add the quinoa, because the quinoa will take 15 or 20 minutes to cook. You can put anywhere from, I don't know, a quarter of a cup to, I may have more like a half a cup in here. But sprinkle on top, and you'll know it's done because the little tiny balls will start to open up and make little curlicues, totally little curlicues. And this is your protein. It's a good amount of protein. And if you find when you taste it and wait till the end, wait till you're ready to put it on, it's too salty, you can always add another potato or a little bit more quinoa. You'll want to be sure that's cooked thoroughly. So you could cook it in a separate pan and then throw it in, but that'll absorb some of the salt if you've got too much salt. So I'm gonna let this boil until those little curly cues of quinoa open up, maybe 15 minutes sometimes, but I'm gonna keep an eye on it to see when they open up. So I don't know if you can see it now, but all these little quinoa pieces have opened up. They form little curlicues. You can see the difference between the center and the outside ring. And I think it's basically done. It's basically done. Once when I was cooking this with a set of people in the kitchen, they kind of randomly picked up some coconut milk and put it in there, not my knowing, and it made it taste really good. So I'm going to do a little bit of that right now. Coconut milk. And yeah, and then you really get a kind of really nice flavor. I also like adding a little mozzarella cheese on the top after you put it in the bowls. But this is one you want to taste to be sure you've got the right amount of salt in it. But it's got a good amount of hearty potatoes and quinoa and butternut squash. And I hope you enjoy this. It's a little bit different kind of recipe. But notice we didn't measure very much. If you want to use more butternut squash and less potatoes or vice versa, certainly you can do that.